It's been a long road getting from there to here. Rage Against the Machine, and today we're going to talk about the last of the Star Trek RPGs, the most recent one. In some respects, I'm a little melancholy, to be honest with you, because one of my goals when starting up this channel was to review every version of Star Trek, and this is the last one, effectively. This is Star Trek Adventures by Modiphius, and honestly, this is without a doubt my favorite Star Trek RPG of the entire collection. Each one has had their strengths and weaknesses, don't get me wrong, and I'm not here to bash any of the others. This is just my personal opinion. I think they really did get it right. Now, a little history on this. Again, after Decipher folded, lost the license, what have you, there was a drought. There was a while where there was no Star Trek RPG. There wasn't a lot of Star Trek anything, really. It was kind of a general drop in Star Trek production of anything. Well, Modiphius came along and got the license. I was running Shadowrun at the time and would have killed to be in the playtest, but none of my players were interested. And I wasn't sure how the system was going to be. I figured it could be good, it could suck, it's hard to tell. But having read it, I'm here to say quite the opposite. So the big thing about this is it uses Modiphius's 2D20 system, which they do use for a lot of games. And honestly, this is normally one of the big red flags for me. I don't care for systems that use the same system as everything else, if it's a copy-paste approach, which is the common way of doing it. Look at something like Palladium, or even D20, where we try so hard to force everything in the genre to fit into the neat little package that is our rule set. I mean, if you look at, like, Palladium's a perfect example. How much of that material is literally copy-pasted from one rulebook to another is almost frightening. And again, you saw it a lot with D20 too, where, this and that are basically the same things, and, I'm a third, and what's the difference between being a third level Jedi Sentinel and being a third level Elven Ranger? That kind of thing really kind of never sat well with me. And, Modiphius has done a lot of different RPGs with this system. John Carter of Mars, Conan comes to mind. In fact, I ran a Conan campaign for a very long time, and the one thing that Modiphius does right, and they're not the only ones, but I praise them for doing this, is they do a very big job of mutating the system severely to make it work. A good example is comparing it to Conan. Conan is a lot crunchier, mechanically speaking. There are rules for psychological warfare in Conan. There are, specific stats for every little piece of equipment. There's a whole set of rules for what they call carousing, which is the between adventure, hey, I'm going to go get drunk in the bar and bang some wenches kind of mentality that you see in Conan, which is great for Conan, but has no place in Star Trek at all. And you see that change. There is the bare bones of the mechanics are there. So if you're a Conan player and you get into a Star Trek campaign, you'll understand the bare bones, but it is a very different mechanic. It isn't just Conan in a with Star Trek trappings. It is a very different game. In Star Trek, character creation is done through a series of templates, which is true in Conan as well, but we'll just leave Conan to the side for now and focus specifically on this. So you choose your race, you choose your profession, you choose like your home world or home world type. Are you from a core world? Are you colony? Or were you born in a space station? Those kind of things. And you build up on these one after another until you have all the parts that build your character, which I do like. It's a kind of an extended life path, but it's more about choices than it is about, like, say, point distribution, like, say, something like Champions or even like Vampire Savage Worlds. It is more just, you make a choice, then you make another choice, then you make a third choice, and this tells you about your character as well as giving you the parts of your character. There are 6 statistics, and there are 6 skills. Now, The mechanics of the system are very simple. You're going to roll two 20-sided dice, and you're going to add your stat and your skill together, and that's the number you have to beat to gain a success. Now, you also have something called focuses. So, like, for example, security is a skill, which is a very broad skill, but phaser combat is a focus. So if you have phaser combat, what happens is anytime you roll that 20-sided die, if you roll under the skill number, not just the skill and stat, but just the skill number, you gain an additional success. So it's possible that 2 dice can net you up to 4 successes normally. Any successes that you make over the amount needed become what's called momentum. And this is one thing I think that just feels so Star Trek. The idea that you then have this pool of points that is available to all players. So let's say, Scotty makes a miracle repair on this ship. Sulu then takes the momentum and throws it into his piloting check to really, to thread the needle of that space anomaly. That is really what that is for. It really fosters teamwork. And if there's a game that I think really teamwork is essential, it would be Star Trek. I mean, even Conan I can see being more of a group of professionals who don't need each other as much. The system worked well in Conan too, don't get me wrong. But in Star Trek, it seems like it's a practically essential part of Star Trek teamwork and development. And that's one of the things I think really sells the system to me. The GM also gets what's called threat, which is basically anti-momentum. And how it works is the GM gets 2 threat for every player on the table. And then there are ways that the players can give the GM more threat if they don't have the momentum to cover something. This threat can then be used to screw with the players, which I also like because it gives a quantifiable excuse for the GM. Let's say if a fight's too easy, as a GM I don't have to go, whoa, 10 more Klingons show up to attack. I can go, well, I'm going to spend 3 momentum and 3 more, Romulans and Shurians fully armored come into the fray. Okay, well, he's had the momentum, or he's had the threat, he can use them. And I think that really gives the game a good ebb and flow. It's, again, yes, the GM could always just heap more misery on the players, but having a quantifiable currency, if you will, makes it a lot more interesting. The Starship rules for this are pretty decent too. They are very much like the character rules. There are some other rules to it, but they are very similar to that. One thing I balked at originally with this game was the use of areas when you're dealing with tactical combat. This game is fully supported by miniatures. There are miniatures that are available from Modiphius. They do a very good job on them. They look great. But you have that tactical edge if you want it. And at first, I'm an old school miniatures gamer. I'm the guy who, happy to play Warhammer or bolt action, get out the rulers and that's 6 inches. My range is this. I'm in line of sight. In Star Trek, you use very vague areas, which it works. It works better than I expected. It makes it easy to kind of keep in mind and keep a tally of. And for Starship Combat, I bought a 3-inch hex mat, and I'm like, okay, each of those hexes is an area. It's the same thing, just a little more evenly spaced. And that's really where I think the game, like I said, it shines. It really is a great system. Also, with it being the most recent, the material is right up to date. They have yet to do anything with Discovery or Picard or Lower Decks, but they have that potential. A couple other things I will bring up. There are 3 supplements for the branches, which I think are great. They also did 1 for each quadrant. And on top of that, they also released this bad boy. This is the Klingon RPG. Star Trek, let's be fair, Klingons are one of those species that are super popular in Star Trek. Wanting to play a Klingon in Star Trek is probably tantamount to wanting to play a Jedi in a Star Wars game. Someone's going to mention it at one point or another, whether you want them to or not. And I think the idea that, again, FOSTA did a great job with the Klingon supplement. Decipher promised one. Last Unicorn promised one. I think Decipher promised one as well. But they didn't really have a chance to deliver on Klingon's Empire of Steel, I think is what they were going to call it. But Modiphius, instead of making a supplement, they actually made it its own RPG. This is a standalone RPG, and in fact has a revised version of of the original system's rules. So everything that you need to play a Klingon campaign, houses, the ships, the kind of conflicts they would have are in this book, which again makes it a lot of fun and makes it worth having. The other product I recommend, especially for new players, is this guy right here. This is the starter set. Now, unlike a lot of starter sets, this one is good because, if nothing else, you do get the official Star Trek dice. Now, this game does use its own special dice to an extent. 20-sided dice are just normal, but the effect dice are kind of a big deal. Now, I'm not normally a big fan of the wacky dice stuff. Star Wars did it, and it worked okay. Other RPGs have tried it. The one thing I do like about Modiphius is that they are pretty simple. It's just one pip or two pip or special symbols. These dice are also pretty easy to print if you have a 3D printer. And, they are pretty universal for the most part. So, like, if you can't find official Star Trek dice, John Carter of Mars or Conan dice will work. They just will look a little different on the table. And they're not that hard to relegate with normal six-siders. But on top of that, this little setup, while like most of your introductory kits, they don't give you character creation rules. They give you pre-gen characters. But they're decent pre-gen characters. They give you a lot of reference to them. And the scenarios that are in the book are a lot of fun. I ran through the scenarios with my game group a while back, and it felt like Star Trek. It was a great Star Trek-y time. The players definitely, I think, got the idea. Also, it comes with, your momentum and threat tokens. So this is literally everything you need to teach a group how to play Star Trek. And for $25, if you're at all interested, it's worth pushing your players through this before spending $50 or so on a hardback. And like I said, there is still a lot of support coming for this product, which is something else I'm excited by. I can't wait to see what else they're coming out with, both in miniatures and in books. There are some things I have yet to, I have seen some stuff of. There's also a living campaign set in the Shackleton Expanse. They just released a supplement on that as well, which I have yet to pick up, so I'm not going to say anything positive or negative about that. But in the most part, this is the game I would run if I'm running a Star Trek campaign going forward. It is accurate to the series, the most accurate to the series. The rules, I think, fit the Star Trek genre like a glove, more so than the others. Now, again, the others are not bad. Don't get me wrong. Probably second, in my opinion, would be Heritage. I would do that one, especially if I'm going to run an old school classic Star Trek campaign. As you may have seen the playthroughs we've done on this channel before. But if it's going to be the new Trek, if it's going to be TNG, Deep Space Nine, Lower Decks, I've got to stick with Modiphius. I think they did an amazing job of crafting a rule set that was familiar to those who've played with 2D20, but also unique enough to feel exactly like being on the final frontier, being a member of Starfleet. Even the experience system, there's also which is almost like a respec of character as opposed to just like gradually increasing or quickly increasing your abilities, is I think well done. The other thing I would also mention as far as that is, you have ideals, and those ideals are a big part of your character. So like, for example, Kirk has the ideal of in love with his ship. So anytime an alien girl tries to seduce him, he's married to his ship is kind of the thing he has to deal with. And I like the fact they put those kind of role-playing tropes and things into it. The closest thing I have to an argument against this game, I think, would be the fact that, again, the equipment list is pretty Spartan, but at the same time, as they point out here, there's no, this isn't Conan. We don't have to know how many arrows you have in your bow, or in your quiver for your bow. This is, we can replicate it. Do you need a medical tricorder? Replicate one or grab one from storage. It's that simple. Do you need pattern enhancers? Again, either get them from storage or replicate them. This is a far future world, and that's what's going to happen. But saying that, again, this is, in fact, my copies get a little beat up from how much I have used it and abused it. There are 2 editions of both of these games. There's special edition and a standard edition. This is actually the special edition, which I got a really good deal on it. That's why I grabbed it. From what I've seen, there's not a huge difference between the two other than covers. The Klingon one, the cover is brown leather with a Klingon symbol on it and Klingon wording. I just got the generic edition. But again, can't say enough good about this product. Kudos to the guys at Modiphius. You do a great job with this stuff, and I look forward to more in the future. And with that, I bid you adieu. Live long and prosper, and of course, happy gaming.